The series kicks off at various points in the past where individuals have experienced abductions by a mysterious, inexplicable white light. In Crescent City, California on March 13, 1946, a young girl named Maya Rutledge vanishes while exploring the woods. On May 11, 1951, Richard Taylor, an African-American U.S. Army soldier stationed in South Korea, becomes a victim of violence by his old comrades after they learn of his romantic involvement with a white woman, and he too disappears. In Tacoma, Washington, a middle-aged businessman named Orson Bailey leaves his office and vanishes on June 11, 1979. On April 22, 2001, two cousins, Sean Farrell and Kyle Baldwin, were at Highland Beach drinking beer when they saw a bright light overhead. Sean disappears and Kyle falls into a coma, and 3 years later in the present, Kyle's father, Tom Baldwin, sits by his bedside in the hospital. While keeping his nightly vigil over Kyle, he watches a news broadcast about a strange comet approaching Earth. Tom's estranged wife Linda visits Kyle, and she and Tom argue about Kyle's well-being. Linda tells Tom that she cannot stay by Kyle's bedside every moment as he does, and the Seattle branch of the Department of Homeland Security closely monitors the comet's path. Soon after, China, the USA, England, France, and Russia all launch missiles, but to no effect. Federal agent Diana Scores begins to suspect it might not be a comet at all. The team tracks the comet, which has slowed down to Mount Rainier. The comet, actually a bright mass of light, disperses in a concussive burst. As the fog clears, thousands of people appear out of nowhere, and amongst them are men, women, and children of all ages and nationalities. Tom Baldwin, watching at the hospital, sees Sean Farrell amongst the returnees and goes to his boss, Dennis Ryland, to ask for his old job back. Ryland teams Tom with Diana to investigate the 4,400 people who have returned mysteriously on the foot of Mount Rainier. Meanwhile, the returnees, held in quarantine, grow restless, and Tom questions Sean about what happened to Kyle, implying Sean knows more than he's saying. Sean's concern for Kyle turns to anger and he storms out, and Richard Tyler and Lily Moore and other returnees share a brief conversation where he mentions that Lily looks like someone he once knew. They discover that the woman in Richard's picture was actually Lily's grandmother, Lily Bonham, and while Orson Bailey speaks to a representative in quarantine about making a phone call, Maya Rutledge gives him a handkerchief just seconds before he has a nosebleed. Later they watch a screen where Barbara Yates, a popular TV talk show host, criticizes the returnees. Maya comments that she doesn't like Yates, and Orson agrees. After preliminary interviews and medical exams, the returnees are released due to a lack of legal grounds to hold them, and upon release, Lily searches for her family, who didn't come to meet her. Richard heads to St. Louis, and Lily finds her house, but learns from her ex-husband Ryan that he has remarried and their daughter Haiti knows nothing about her. Lily's insistence on seeing Haiti results in Brian issuing a temporary restraining order against her, and at a celebration for his return, Sean talks with Tom outside when a bird flies into a window. Sean picks it up, noting its broken neck, but seconds later it flies away uninjured. Tom is perplexed, and later, Sean gets into a fight at school, and during the altercation, seems to drain the life out of his opponent, stopping just short of killing him. Maya is placed in temporary foster care and tells her foster parents that she doesn't want her shoes on the floor because they'll get wet. Richard faces challenges as well, and his old home is gone, and with his relatives deceased, he has nowhere to go. He decides to return to Seattle to find Lily, and at Maya's new home, a washing machine hose breaks, flooding the nearby rooms, including where her shoes were. The next day, while visiting her parents' graves with her foster parents, they discuss the rundown area. Maya tells them that they'll be buried in a nicer cemetery down the road, and the next day they receive a brochure from the cemetery. They later return Maya to the Homeland Security, assuring her that it's not her fault. Orson Bailey also discovers a power. After visiting his wife in a nursing home, he goes to his former firm to reclaim his job. However, his partner's son, now running the company, informs him that his interest in the firm was bought out, with no available openings. Upset that evening, Orson visits Adam Kensington and unintentionally causes a tremor, shattering glass and causing Adam's death from skull fractures. Orson is arrested but released due to lack of evidence, and Tom and Diana question him, witnessing his power under pressure. Orson visits his wife and learns of her passing, causing another tremor, and he appears, prompting Tom and Diana to track him down. Lily and Richard meet at a park where she used to bring Heidi to, and they decide to look for an apartment together, questioning if their captors intended for them to meet. At a doctor's appointment, Lily learns her nausea is due to pregnancy. Tom and Diana locate Orson at a lake cabin, where Diana was forced to shoot him non-fatally, and they return him to quarantine. Discussing the incident, Diana asks Tom about Sean, and he hides the bird incident from her. Shortly after, Sean visits Kyle in the hospital, and placing his hand on Kyle's chest, Kyle briefly awakens and sits up before falling back into a coma, and Sean steps back stunned. Carl Morsery disappeared on February 16, 2003 from Seattle, Washington, and he was missing for 18 months. As he discusses how things haven't really changed for him with a loyal customer, his boss Bert scolds him for serving patrons instead of stocking shelves. After work, Carl meets his wife Grace, and as she finishes her shift, he suggests cutting through Bradley Park, but Grace warns him that it's no longer safe and is rife with crime, and Carl doesn't believe her. At NTAC, Ryland informs Tom and Diana that he believes Maya Rutledge has precognitive abilities. The agents ponder why Maya, a little girl, was held for 6 years and returned with the ability to foresee the future. Richard and Lily Moore sign a lease for an apartment after a brief conversation. As Lily looks around, everything starts to warp and she feels terrified and nauseous, and she senses the baby is causing it and tells Richard that she's feeling unwell and needs to leave the apartment. Carl returns home after a quick trip to the store, and he had cut through the park and had been mugged, but he explains to Grace that he wasn't hurt. Instead, he fought back and scared off the attackers, and while telling her that he feels improved, he tries to convince Grace that he has been given powers for a reason. Carl is inspired to restore the park to its former state. The next day, Tom and Linda were called to the hospital, and Dr. Mayhew noticed something unusual in Kyle's EEG, a brief burst of brain activity last Thursday. Tom checks the records at a nurse station to see if anyone visited Kyle that day, and the nurse on duty informs him that it's his nephew Sean that came. Tom visits Sean's school to discuss what happened on Thursday, and Sean admits he visited Kyle, but insists that he did nothing. Tom is quite skeptical, and Diana and Tom meet Marco in the theory room at the NTAC, where Marco confirms Diana's theory that gravity has changed at locations where the 4,400 people disappeared. This leads them to consider the possibility of alien abduction, and at their new apartment, Lily tells Richard that she can sense her baby's thoughts and reactions to situations. She wants to see Heidi, but Richard reminds her that Brian put a restraining order on her, and that night, while his wife was asleep, Carl goes to the park, painting benches and cleaning graffiti-covered walls. A woman screams on 3 men attempting to assault her, and Carl intervenes and the men chase him. He fights them off as she watches in astonishment, and Diana and Tom visit the attempted rape victim at her workplace. She is shaken and tells the agents that 1 man took on all the 3 attackers. The agents mention that 1 man defeating 3 isn't impossible, but she emphasizes that his movements were extraordinary. And meanwhile, Lily hides outside Brian's house, watching through a window as Heidi does her homework. The baby reacts with discomfort, causing Lily to knock over a plant. Brian notices her and she's arrested. She calls Richard from the station. At the supermarket, Carl's boss, Bert, is angry that Carl was chatting with customers again. He confronts Carl and pushes him around, and Carl grabs Bert's hand and applies pressure, saying, "I asked you not to do that." Bert wisely decides to back off. Later, Richard approaches Brian as he leaves his house. Richard introduces himself and promises that if Brian drops the charges, Lily won't bother him or Heidi again. Brian reluctantly agrees, and at the Morrissey household, Carl and Grace argue. She wants him to stop being a vigilante, but he sees it as his chance to make a difference. She warns Carl that if he doesn't stop, he will get hurt, and threatens to report him to the NTAC. Lily relapses and finds Richard waiting for her. She tells him that when she saw Heidi, she saw a happy family despite her absence, and promises to stay away. She even feels that the baby dislikes Heidi anyways. Sean was working on his car when Nikki Hudson arrives, and she asks why he's been acting differently toward her lately, and she accidentally touches the engine and burns herself, and Sean rubs her hand, and the burn disappears. Nikki realizes that he can heal and kisses him, and at the NTAC, Tom finally signs his divorce papers, and Diana explains how she narrowed down the possible vigilantes. After a brief explanation, she identifies Carl Morrissey, who works in the seafood section of a supermarket. Carl works through the park at night again and sees a man spraying graffiti on a clean wall. He yells at the man, who throws the paint can at him, and they fight, and Carl easily wins. Other thugs begin to gang up on him, and Tom and Diana go to the Morrissey house. Diana asks Grace if she has heard of the Bradley Park Vigilante, and Grace feigns ignorance. Eventually, she gives in and takes the agent to the park, and they find Carl on a bench with a large knife wound in his abdomen. Tom calls for an ambulance, and as Carl dies, he tells Grace that although he thought that he was sent back to clean up the neighborhood, he was apparently wrong. As the police clear out the next morning, people from Carl's neighborhood begin to clean up the park. Diana decides to sign the paperwork approving temporary guardianship of Maya, and when she enters the room, Maya was already dressed and holding her suitcase. She knew before anyone could tell her the news, and Tom rushes through a hospital corridor and enters Kyle's room to find Linda sitting by an empty bed. Kyle was in surgery to relieve the excess fluid in his skull, and Linda tells Tom that there's a high probability Kyle could suffer permanent brain damage. Diana watches the Barbara Yates show, where Jordan Collier, a member of the 4400, seeks to humanize their group for greater acceptance and understanding. Diana opens the newspaper to discover a headline announcing the return of the Friday Harbor killer after 21 years. At NTAC headquarters, Tom and Diana discuss the murder of Teresa Barron, and they note that Oliver Knox of 4400, who disappeared 21 years ago, reappeared recently, coinciding with Teresa's death. Tom and Diana meet Sheriff Connard of Friday Harbor to investigate the potential connection between Knox and the recent crime. However, they learn that Teresa Barron was born after Knox's abduction, complicating the investigation. Sean visits MT Rayner, where he encounters numerous other 4400s, and Jordan Collier arrives and expresses his intent to organize and unite the 4400 in the face of increasing societal resistance. He invites them to gather at his home on Thursday, and Tom and Diana accompany Sheriff Connard into the woods to search for evidence. Diana discovers a fingerprint on a leaf which could prove crucial to the case. The fingerprint belongs to Philip Lopez, a convicted rapist who served 18 years. Visiting Lopez's residence, they find his body hanging from a stairwell with a self-offing note confessing to the murders. The next day, Knox photographs a young woman at a video store, and he visits a nearby bar and converses with Felicia, the bartender, and later shows a photo to Charlie Stanley, hinting at something significant regarding her. Richard urges Lily to see a doctor about her pregnancy concerns, fearing she might be perceived as delusional again. Stanley walks through the streets, his white shirt stained with blood, hearing Knox's voice in his mind. Tom and Diana witness Stanley confessing to the murders of the video clerk and 9 other victims. However, it's revealed that Stanley was only 5 years old when the murder occurred. Moreover, Philip Lopez was left-handed and couldn't have committed all the murders, as the Friday Harbor killer is right-handed. At Collier's residence, members of the 4400 gather, each wearing badges displaying their names and year of abduction. Sean discusses his abilities with Collier, who deflects specifics to maintain plausible deniability. Collier later finds Lily in the garden, feeling lightheaded, and Richard gives her water as she confides in Collier about her pregnancy concerns. He then advises her against disclosing this piece of information to their counselor. Collier offers Richard a job within the security department of his foundation for the 4400, an offer Richard accepts. Tom and Diana return to Friday Harbor after receiving a letter from the killer containing details only the perpetrator would know. They were unable to arrest Knox without definitive evidence linking him to the crimes. Knox arrives at a garage where he shows a photo of Felicia to Aaron Mitchell, an employee. In a flashback, Sean recalls the night of his return, witnessing bright tentacles engulfing Kyle's head as he screamed. Sean intervened and was taken instead, and the next morning, Felicia runs through the woods and encounters Mitchell, who asks for her assistance in locating his dog. She attempts to evade him, but he stops her, and as she screams and tries to escape, Mitchell pulls out a knife and Tom and Sheriff Connor arrive, drawing their guns. Mitchell is interrogated by Tom and remains silent when a photo of him and Knox at the garage is shown. Tom and Diana depart to continue their investigation, and at Knox's residence, they enter through the rear and find the interior illuminated by candles. Scrawled on the wall in blood is a chilling message: Felicia must die. Felicia returns home where Knox confronts her, and she barricades herself in a room, smashing Knox's head with a vase as police cars arrive. Knox grabs her throat with a knife, but Tom, Diana, and Connor intervene, ordering him to drop the weapon and release her. Tom and Diana share their discoveries with Marco in the theory room. Concerned about the 4400's origins, they speculate that the entity responsible for their return might not have benevolent intentions, especially evident in Knox's case with enhanced abilities. Marco explores the ripple effect of past actions, linking Bailey's decision to Kensington's collapse and Carl's death, prompting community involvement efforts. Tom arrives at the hospital, finding Sean in Kyle's room. Sean steps away as Kyle, awake and sitting up, asks Tom the haunting question, "How long have I been in the dark?" Dr. Mayhew gives the go-ahead for Kyle to return home, advising Tom and Linda to be patient with Kyle as he adjusts. They arrive at Linda's house and take Kyle up to his room, and Kyle asserts that it's not his room or even his house, prompting Tom to move back in. Tom decides to visit Sean to thank him, and Sean explains that all he did was place his hands on Kyle, and Kyle woke up, and Sean refuses NTAC's request to study his abilities. Richard and Lily were then walking home after a movie. As they approach their apartment, Richard unlocks the door, and Lily's baby becomes uneasy again, and Richard realizes that the door is booby-trapped and shields Lily as the apartment explodes. Diana and Tom arrive at the scene, and they collect several pieces of the bomb and bag them as evidence before returning to NTAC headquarters. At the headquarters, Tom and Diana explain their findings to Dennis, noting the simplicity of the bombs. Dennis orders them to trace hits on websites publishing similar bomb recipes. Richard, Lily, and Collier walk around Collier's new housing complex, and Collier explains that it's a safe haven for returnees feeling persecuted, and Richard and Lily accept Collier's offer for a house. At Homeland Security, Tom discusses the ripple effect with Diana, speculating on the connection between the bombings and Knox's killing spree. Dean and Glenn Keating, brothers of Gail Keating, one of Knox's victims, were at home making a bomb. The Barbara Yates show plays in the background, advocating for the removal of the 4400 as they load up their truck. Barbara Yates was leaving work when a man grabs her arm, pointing to a limo across the street. And inside the limo, Ryland hands her a manila envelope containing a story about a TV news host involved in a hit-and-run accident. He warns her that she'll be charged with vehicular manslaughter, and as she exits, she bids her goodbye, and Diana picks up Maya from school, learning Maya can't return due to the risk that she poses. Maya consoles Diana, saying someone will soon make everything better. Mary Deneville, a 4400, carries flowers to her van. She notices a sunflower wilting and coaxes it back to health, and when she starts the van engine, it explodes, and at the high school, Nikki tells Sean that she broke up with Danny. Sean mentions that he saw it earlier, and she explains that she had nothing to do with him, and she expresses a desire to get away for a while, and Sean offers to take her to a secluded spot. At NTAC headquarters, Lytel discusses conflicts of interest with Diana and Tom. They defend their positions, and Lytel warns them of impending dangers that they can adapt or be sidelined. Lily confronts Collier about his control and spending, and he assures her that he has no intention of coming between her and Richard. At home, Diana, on the phone with Tom, traces bomb materials to the William Wayne Construction Company, and Sean takes Nikki to MT Raynor and shows her where the 4400 were brought back. They then discuss their lives and end up sharing an intimate moment. Diana calls Tom, informing him that she tracked the blasting cap of the Keating brothers, and they brief Ryland, suspecting revenge for Gail's murder. Ryland offers an APB on their truck, and Tom informs Richard of the threat, and Diana spots Dean's truck heading toward Sean's house. They rush to the roof and board a helicopter, and the helicopter lands in front of the truck, and they order the driver out, only to discover he didn't show up for work that day. Back at the NTAC HQ, they spot an unmarked van outside Collier's complex. Richard sees the van and Lily's baby senses danger, and Tom and Diana arrive in a helicopter hovering over Richard's house. Tom aims at the van, and Richard and guards point shotguns at the Keating brothers, prepping the bomb. Tom hits one, but they set off the bomb and flee, and the van heads to the gate, and Richard shoots a tire, causing it to tip and explode harmlessly. Tom and Diana then arrest the Keatings, and Lytle goes to the hospital to speak to Dr. Mayhew about Kyle. Tom arrives home, where Linda rushes to him, urging him to come along because it's important. They find Kyle sitting naked in the backyard with sprinklers running, and Kyle tells Tom that he knows what's wrong, and he's not Kyle Baldwin. The season finale opens with Kyle refusing to answer to the name Kyle. In the hallway, Dr. Mayhew speaks to Tom about Kyle's mental status, diagnosing him with dissociative disorder. Lytle enters Kyle's room to take him into government custody. Kyle whispers to his mother, "Tell Tom I figured it out. I know where I have to be." At Homeland Security, Ryland was displeased that Kyle was in the government's hands because Lytle labels him as the only witness to an abduction. Tom rushes in and shoves Lytle against the wall, demanding to know Kyle's location while drawing his gun. Ryland coaxes Tom to put away the gun and vows to get Kyle back. Lily was at Dr. Kern's office for a parental visit, and the doctor wanted to do an amino-synthesis, suspecting her baby might have a genetic disease. At Collier's office, Richard hears the secretary talking to Dr. Kern, and Richard confronts Kern about calling Collier every time Lily visits. Richard informs Lily that the baby has sickle cell anemia, a disorder affecting African Americans, and they wonder why Collier had Kern not inform Lily, and Tom, Marco, and Diana locate Kyle. Diana tells Tom that they will go once the night shift arrives. Linda follows Tom's car to the safe house, ensuring that no one follows her. Tom will get Kyle and meet her there, and then they share a kiss. And Diana picks Maya up from the daycare and sees Lytle talking to her. Diana orders him to stay away, and Lytle tells Maya that he will see her again. And Richard tells Collier that he appreciates his help, but needs him to back off. Tom knocks on Diana's door, and Maya tells Tom not to worry, that he'll find Kyle, who's the answer to everything. Diana tranquilizes a guard at the quarantine headquarters, and they exit with Kyle, who insists on going to Highland Beach. Tom calls Linda to let her know that they have Kyle, and as they drive, Kyle grabs the wheel and heads for the beach where Sean disappeared. Jordan shows Lily a headline from 1945, trial debt set for Negro in assault case. Lily shows the paper to Richard, and he recounts being arrested for assault after a woman flirted with him on his birthday. Lily realizes Collier's manipulation and tells Richard that they need to leave. Sean was at home when Danny punches him after finding out that Nikki likes Sean, and Sean drains the life energy from Danny, prompting their mom to order Sean to leave. Lily and Richard try to leave the complex, but Collier and another man arrive. Richard pulls out a gun, ordering Collier to stay away from Lily. Collier places his hand on Lily's stomach, causing the baby to inflict pain on him. They escape as Collier threatens to come after them. At Highland Beach, Kyle tells Tom, "I belong here," and Sean arrives at Collier's complex. Collier allows him to stay as long as he wants, but asks about his ability. Ryland and Lytle arrive at the beach, and Tom tells Kyle that they need to leave. Kyle looks upward and begins to gasp as blue light emanates from his chest, and Tom realizes that it's not his son, and the being explains that Kyle was meant to be a channel until Sean intervened. The being reveals its identity as a human from the future, from the place where the 4400 were taken. In the being's future, humanity was dying out. They took people who could prevent the end, altering them before returning them to the past to change the future. Lytle and others grow desperate, and when Diana touches the light, she's thrown aback, and then Lytle shoots at it. The bullet hits Kyle's chest, and the light vanishes, and Kyle falls to the ground dead, and shortly after, Kyle suddenly takes a breath. Bright light envelops him, and he recognizes his dad as himself again. 6 months later, Lily and Richard were living in a cabin, and Lily feels a sensation and lets Richard know that it's time for the baby to be born, so he gets the car ready, and in the final scene, as they drive down the road, The trees line up and bow down to them.
And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.